first and foremost, it's so wonderful to see you all. It's been a long time since I've seen a lot of you, so thank you. Try and keep it together. It's not working. So I'm going to start with some business. A huge debt of gratitude is owed to an army of people who made today possible. The folks at Napa Valley Grape Growers who have really stepped up. And, I've learned, saw my dad also is a bit of a father figure of the organization. So Jill, Emily, Sonia, the whole team who is volunteering to help pull this off today. Thank you. Additionally, Napa Valley Media is making us look good, making my borderline millennialism really work for me. So thank you for that. Robin, Doug, Walt, Bernie, who unfortunately can't be here, but I hope is with us. And everyone who's helping out, making Steve present today by making this event go so beautifully. So thank you for that. And of course, this wouldn't be a Steve Moulds party if there wasn't a show of gratitude for my mother. He took every opportunity to acknowledge her amazingness. I'm going to tell you I love you every day. It's her immense love and support that she pours into everything that you can see here today, in every detail and in all of you. And I appreciate you all being here to support her as we move forward into our next adventure. So we're here today to celebrate a gentleman, a Renaissance man, a grape grower, a businessman and entrepreneur, a humanitarian, and a citizen of the world. That's my dad, Steve Moulds. You're going to hear today all of these amazing stories about how he inspired people and the crazy things that he inspired them to do. And I'm going to share one of those stories with you. My dad was the inspiration behind the hike to Kilimanjaro. On that trek, we were coupled with a duo that had just graduated from the SEALs training program. So it's a bit of an odd couple. But it was amazing. We learned a thing or two. It was also on that trek that my dad received the nickname Babu, and that was bestowed upon him by our guide and by the Sherpas. And Babu, for those of you who don't know, is Swahili for wise old man. As we headed out on our trek, we actually had to sign into a log. Everyone who goes to ascend Kili has to sign into a log. And we flipped through a couple pages as we signed in, and he was the oldest man on the mountain. So he was old wise man indeed. And on that trek, he was actually the only one of the hikers who wasn't struck by altitude sickness. So I know, working out at the gym wearing an N95 mask at that time was not that common. So it really worked to his advantage, I think. But I was at about 15,000 feet. I was hit by altitude sickness, and it took me out. I thought, I'm living in Tahoe. I live at altitude. No, that was not quite the same. And so it struck me, it hit me really hard. It debilitated me. I was in a daze, and And the guide said, if I don't come out of it in 24 hours, that they'll have to take me off the mountain. And so Dad said, we got this. We got this. I'm like, all right, where's my backpack? And he said, okay, hold on to the straps on my backpack. You follow straight behind me, and I'll guide you up the mountain, and we'll go together. Without him, I don't think I would have made it to the top. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, he had like 35 years on me, but he got me to the top of that mountain. And it was after 7.5 days of climbing that we victoriously reached the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro, all 19,341 feet. The loose scree on the descent posed a bit of an unexpected challenge, but I was like, this is where Tahoe's really gonna kick in for me. Because we skied the scree all the way down to the crater, and it was awesome. It was truly amazing. After the day and a half it took then to descend Kilimanjaro, after the 7.5 up, my mom met us at the base. And she had been trekking with chimpanzees at Lake Tanganyika in the meantime. So a little bit of an adventure streak in both of them. Her thoughtful self had arranged for us to have massages at our first night's lodging off the mountain. It was the worst massage of my life. It was the most painful experience. You could hear us howling from one hut to the other. Ow, no, not there. And it's worse than, I have to say, I have a terrible track record when it comes to spa treatments. And it was worse than the bathhouse in Budapest, and even worse than the granite slabs of Petra, which I experienced with you. It was terrible, but thank you. It was through those trials and triumphs, the whole way Dad was there, cheering us on and inspiring us all to succeed. So there are more, obviously, lessons that I've learned from him. And just to touch on it, just continuing to challenge yourself, to never stay too comfortable. You know, he had a saying, to work your plan, or plan your work and work your plan. Always set a goal. So continuing to challenge yourself. New adventures or other areas of personal growth. Don't stay too comfortable. A commitment to service. Find an area where you can make an impact. Roll up your sleeves and get to work. And as a young-ish parent, the importance of spending one-on-one time with your children, supporting them in understanding their interests, always showing up, and that's whether you're driving them to San Francisco for SF opera rehearsal or down the street to soccer games. It's important to be there and show up. Be an active listener and always ask questions. Acknowledge everyone's contribution, big or small, and always leave a big tip. That there's nothing that a good crying laugh and a glass of SB can't solve, and to always trust your cape. Thank you. I'd like quickly to introduce our next speakers. Harvey, Barbara, Gary, they've all known my dad longer than I have. They probably have way better stories than I do. My dad befriended Barb and Gary in the 70s during his kind of bachelor bartending days. And of course, Harvey had been pals with my parents since the late 60s at San Jose State. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Harvey Loew.
Betsy had paid an homage to Scott Harrison for Scott introducing Steve to Betsy. And I have a little homage to Scott too, because Scott introduced me to Steve over 50 years ago. And, you know, when you have a friendship for over 50 years, you have a lot of stories that you could tell. But you also have a lot of stories you shouldn't tell. I remember when Steve began his successful career at Cornish and Carey. And it was at the time where I was just not enchanted with my career, and I was ready for a change. So Steve said, you know, we got to talk, Harvey. And he came down to Santa Cruz from Portola Valley. And he came down to play a little tennis, to lift my spirits, and to talk about Cornish and Carey. So after the first set at Cabrillo College, we sat in the bleachers, and Steve started telling me about the real estate industry, about his experiences at Cornish and Carey. He was very persuasive but not pushy, a trait that probably served him well in his career. He also made it enticing. But in the end, I said, Steve, you know, all I know about real estate is from Monopoly. And Steve goes, Harvey, you know, don't worry about those small things. Just think about it, and when you're ready, we'll do a deeper dive. And so I did think about it. And I thought about it really, really a long time. And at some points, I regret not taking that offer. But I took a different career path, and I didn't regret that either. But Steve, you know, was always a big influence on the choices that I was making at different points in my life. The takeaway from all this is that Steve wanted to share with me something that was meaningful, fulfilling, and special to him. And that says a lot about the guy. A story that I really like remembering was when Betsy and Steve said, our family's complete. It's time for Steve to get a vasectomy. So when Steve told me that, I thought, oh, there's a prank in this scenario. So the first thing I did is call Betsy and said, Betsy, and I told her what I intended to do, and she said, okay, here's the place, here's the time, and the date. And I went, great. And so I thought, I need a partner in crime on this. So I called a mutual friend, Tom Brown. I said, Tom, what I want to do is sneak into Steve's room with an operating gown and a surgical mask and just scare the living bejesus out of him. Tom sort of hesitated, and he went, yeah, okay, I'm in. So Tom drives down from, I think, Livermore, and I drive up from Santa Cruz, and we meet in the parking lot of this clinic. It was a crisp fall day. It was between, I think, Thanksgiving and Christmas. And to our luck, we walk into the clinic, and somehow we got shuttled into the right nurse, because not only did she have the power to give us the PPEs, you know, there was no shortage then, she also had a great sense of humor. And she said, oh, that's great, you guys. You're going to make fun of him. You're going to have fun, and just do it. So she handed us these gowns and masks, and Tom and I started walking to the restroom to change into them. I don't know why we needed a restroom, for God's sakes. And I said to Tom, Tom, we need a little twist on this. It's Christmas season, and there's a Christmas song. I don't know if it's a carol, it's a Christmas song, and it goes, bum ba da dum dum da da dum bum ba da dum. Yeah, you know that tune? And I said, let's do these lyrics. Your day will come, you never will. Your day will come. He's getting a vasectomy, right? I said, okay, Tom, we're going to start singing it just before his room and to see if he can pick up anything. And then when we get into his room, we'll blast it like two opera singers. Your day will come, you never will. Your day will come, you never will. Steve about jumped out of his sheets. I mean, he turned around and looked at us, and he just froze for about 5 seconds. And then he broke out in laughter, and so did we. And we stood there and kibitzed for about 2 minutes until, the nurse yanked us out. The last time I was up here staying with Betsy and Steve was with my wife, Sherry. And we were here in May of 2018 because our niece, who is a young, acclaimed chef in Tel Aviv, was asked to present to the first plant-based symposium at Copia. And for those of you that don't know Copia, it's a culinary institute affiliated with the one in New York. So I asked my niece, I said, what do you want to do in the kind of precious short free time you have? She said, well, I want to go to this restaurant in San Francisco called Catonia, and I want to dine at the French Laundry. Yeah, you and everybody else. I said, I can make San Francisco happen, but the French Laundry, forget about it. The next day, I had a whim. And who did I call? Steve, of course. And I told Steve about this wishful thinking, and Steve goes, no, let's see, give me a couple weeks. Now, my niece was coming in 3 weeks. A couple of weeks isn't much time. Steve calls me back in 10 days and says, we're in. He got 6 people into the French Laundry with 3 weeks' notice, with only a 2-day window, and without the help of Gavin Newsom. Steve can manage to make things happen. Steve also managed to get more out of life than most people could imagine. He had so many varied interests and experiences. He was a Peace Corps volunteer. He was a patron of the San Jose Repertory Theater, a supernumerary at the San Francisco Opera, managing partner Cornish and Carey, the president of the Napa Grape Growers Association. He helped restore his Peace Corps town after a devastating hurricane. He hiked Camino de Santiago. He biked, I think, 3 times across the United States, trekking in Antarctica. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Out here, he grew beautiful, luscious grapes with the help of Betsy and Roberto. Steve was an inspiring man who lived a life with humility and dignity. He gave of himself to people, to organizations, to cultures, to communities near and far. Steve, he took to heart a concept called agape. Agape is a Greek term for love, unselfish love, unconditional love, the caring for others. And Steve learned that from a sociology professor who became his friend, Wynne Salisbury. Steve took agape to heart. He lived it. And we are some of the beneficiaries of it. So thank you, Steve. Thank you for agape. Thank you for an enduring friendship. Thank you for all those wonderful memories. I will surely miss you.
Hi, my name's Barbara Lencioni.
And my name is Gary Lencioni.
It's interesting because when I was in college, I took a speech class, and I told my professor how terrified I am about speaking in public. He said, just imagine everybody has no clothes on. There's a lot of naked people here. When I think of Steve, I think of him as a man of many hats, and you've obviously already heard a lot of that. But social worker, realtor, real estate broker that helped companies expand in other states, hiker, biker, vintner, grape grower, philanthropist for sure, husband, family, father, and my friend. I first met Steve and Betsy when they lived in Little Uvis Road in Gilroy, and I refer to this, and this is in the 70s, as their twigs and nuts, Birkenstocks, hippy-dippy days. Steve showed me his farm, or their farm, I should say, and showed me all his animals. And I was most impressed by this pig that he had, and he loved this pig. He called him Breakfast. And by golly, that's what he became. I mean, who names their animals and then eats them? Really. At the time, Steve was also, a bilingual, and he was running for the school board in Gilroy for the junior college, I believe. He wasn't elected, but I saved that poster forever because I thought, well, I can use this sometime. Unfortunately, I lost it, so anyway.
Betsy, Hayden, Reed, thank you very much for giving me the privilege and the honor to say a couple of words about Steve and share a couple of adventures that we had together. I met Steve in the 70s while bartending at a local establishment on the peninsula, and we became lifelong friends. I have a limited time to speak. I wish I could tell you about all the adventures we had together, so I took two in particular that I wanted to talk about. And one was in 1990 when the San Francisco 49ers played the Denver Broncos in New Orleans. Steve, of course, being passionate about his team, asked Alan Weber, another good friend of his, if we wanted to join him. And I said, hell yes, let's go. So off we went on the plane. Alan and I got on the plane with Steve, and on the way out there, I said, well, where are we sitting, Steve, in the stadium? He said, well, I haven't gotten the tickets yet. Typical Steve, he'll make things happen. And he did. We had great seats, even though they were euchre seats, but they were great seats anyway. So after the 49ers won the game, I think we went to every party that the 49ers had in celebrating the party. I think we drank the town dry, honestly. About midnight, Alan and I said, we'd had enough. We wanted to go to bed because we had a 7 o'clock pickup the following morning. So Steve, of course, being Steve, said, I'm not done celebrating. My team won. I'm going to continue on. So Alan and I went to bed, and the following morning we woke up about 6 o'clock, and Steve's bed was still perfect. He hadn't slept in it. And we go, oh my God, what happened to him? We were fearful that something happened to him on the streets, New Orleans being a wild and crazy town like it was. But no, nothing happened to him. We came down to the bus about 15 minutes before it was going to take off. And Steve comes walking up with a Bloody Mary in one hand, his bag in the other, got on the bus, and off we went. We arrived at Steve and Betsy's house. I looked Alan and Steve in the eyes, and I said, I don't want to see you guys for a month. I need to dry out. But he was passionate about his team, and we had a great time there.
After about 5 years, Steve and Betsy decided to move off the hill and come into Menlo Park and then Portola Valley, where we started their family. We raised our kids together and had a lot of fun family times, including trips to Hawaii, obviously. I think the kids liked the dads the best when the dads went out, unbeknownst to the moms, and bought them four-wheel quads to drive. And where were they, 7 years old?
7 and 9.
7 and 9, oh, okay. I also traveled with Steve and Bets to Belize and Honduras, and you've heard a lot about Honduras. But I have to tell you something. Steve really is considered royalty in Honduras. Because of all his philanthropic work. I mean, it's incredible. I actually witnessed people lining up just to see him outside their house. I mean, for hours. They wanted to meet with Steve. It was truly amazing.
I should probably finish the first part of the story. Steve ended up on the plane in. Steve met a couple of guys on the plane that he met at one of the 49er parties, and they continued to carry on all night long until the bus picked us up. So I wanted to.
There wasn't another woman.
No, there wasn't another woman for sure. So I needed to clarify that for sure. Yeah.
I wondered that myself, Bets.
I saw everybody questioning that. So another memorable trip that I made with Steve, Alan along as well, my son Chad and Reed. It was a horsebacking trip with a backpacking trip to the headwaters of the Tuolumne. Steve always enjoyed the outdoors and he loved the Sierras. And he came to us one day and said, it's a trip that I want to make and I've got it set up. You guys interested in going? I said, hell yes, let's do it. So about 6 a.m. when they're in the Sierras, the guides picked us up, and both of us, all three of us, were terribly hungover. I mean, just horribly. And I don't particularly like horses at all, and they don't like me either. So it was the guides, the pack animal. There was Reed and Alan, Steve, and Chad, and myself carrying up the rear, eating dust just terribly. And the horse wanted to go one way, I wanted to go the other. The horse won, threw me off. Steve comes running back. He said, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't want to get back on that horse." So he says, "Get your ass up there, let's go." So sure enough, got back on the horse and rode into camp. We got into camp and we started setting up for the night. And Chad and I were busy getting our stuff set up. We pitched the tent, put our bags inside. We got done, looked over at Reed and Steve and Alan. All they had were their sleeping bags and an air mattress under it. And I looked at Steve. I said, "What happens if it rains?" He said, "It's not going to rain. It's not going to rain." About midnight, it started pouring. I peeked out and looked at Steve in the rain, and I said, "You're not getting in here at all. Hell no, you're not getting in here." So it was fun. But Steve made the best out of it, as he always did, the best times. It's probably the only time I ever saw him not prepared for a situation, but he did make the best out of it, believe me. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, obviously I think I said already that we used to go to the Stanford football games, and Steve inherited the 49er football games, or tickets from his father, Charlie, and I never got invited to one of those, but I'm gonna forgive him because obviously Gary did. Steve was known and is known for his passion for life, adventure, devotion to his family, and dedication to helping others. Steve lived the life to the fullest, that's for sure. So hats off to Steve. To say he will be missed is an understatement. Thank you. Don't cry. You said you wouldn't cry.
I'll miss you, buddy. God bless you.
Good job.
Come back for round 3.